Thank you. Dziękujemy za szklanki.
Thank you.
You want some water before we start? Maybe helpful since we are going to talk the whole hour. Good. Okie doke. So we are hosting the two artists from Brussels this year, which is a part of our cooperation with the Wallonie Brussels International, our partner for many years, who provides us with fabulous guests from Brussels. And this year we were provided not only by the guests, but also by the exhibition that you can see on the other side of the street in front of the regional library in Krakow. And this exhibition contains 27 panels of comics of young artists from Brussels. And among them, there are our two guests with their comics. You can also meet them at the Museum Comics or at the fair, where they're going to sign some of their books, prints, or just draw for you. So basically, we probably want to know more about how is it to live and work in Brussels. So let's start with, because one of you is Canadian by origin, that's Rebecca, and you are Belgium.
Yeah, I'm from Brussels, born and raised there, and yeah, I'm trying to escape, but I always end up coming back. So it's a nice city.
Well, maybe that's a good opportunity today to, explore Poland as the place to where to escape. And Rebecca, how did you end up in Brussels?
I grew up in Montreal and spent my formative years there working for a comics publisher in Montreal, Drawn and Quarterly.
Oh, that's the famous one.
Great publisher. But I wanted to work on my own work and not just work as a designer, which is what I was doing for Drawn and Quarterly. And I went to Marseille to work in a screen printing studio there and met my partner who's French. And so Brussels was kind of a compromise between Marseille and Montreal.
Okay, because more people are speaking English, because you're natively an English speaker or
I am, yeah.
or a French speaker, English speaker. And you, Mathilde, you?
I'm also I'm French speaker, and I had to learn Flemish because we have two languages in Belgium.
Yeah, exactly. We heard about the famous Flemish language,
Yeah.
which is like something you can't really understand nowhere else outside of Flemish land.
Flanders.
Flanders, yeah, that's the proper name. So, but are you fluent in that?
I studied in it, and I used to be semi-fluent, but as a good Belgian, I'm too shy to say I am fluent. So
I get
this is
it.
my position.
This is like me with Ukrainian. I do understand the language, but I have a real problem to, express it. So, but if I understand correctly, both of you are working on the Franco-Belgian market currently. So you both of you are working primarily in French language for the moment, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, but actually, I started drawing comics in English, and then translated to French. So I first started writing in English because I'm an internet kid, and I grew up reading tons of Tumblrs, and then I moved to Instagram, etc. And so I must say I was, like, language-wise, I was more connected to the English way to narrate a story. And then I rediscovered, through translating my comics in French, the Franco-Belgian culture that I forgot after turning 12 and totally ignored for mangas and other cooler versions of comics.
So escaping is your thing, as I see. I mean, you decided to escape from the Franco-Belgian culture to the international English internet culture, and then come back. But Rebecca, your primary language is English, and then you had to learn French, or is it like everyone living in Canada is bilingual?
In Montreal is a pretty bilingual city. Language politics are dicey there in a way that is similar to Belgium, where you sort of end up on one side of the linguistic divide, and it's hard to cross over or to be on both
All
sides
right.
simultaneously. I also write in English and then translate myself into French. Yeah.
I mean, it's probably a good opportunity to be present on both markets. I mean, Franco-Belgian and Anglo-Saxonian, let's call it Anglo-American, because we really don't have it here. I mean, if you are a Polish writer or a drawer, I mean, comic artist in general, you have to basically maybe the new generation of comic artists are primarily working, as you said, they are internet kids. So maybe they're working in English, but my generation, they always started with the local market and then looking for a foreign publisher to be translated and published in basically France, because it's the biggest market and the closest market to Poland. Of course, some artists are also present on the American market, but this is a minority. Majority is interested in French market. This is why you could meet more than 40 artists from Poland this year in the Angoulême Festival. By the way, you didn't come, yeah, for the...
No, I recently became a mother, so it made...
Yay, congratulations.
Thank you. But it's just like, it really changes your life in a way that you cannot do anything on like, you can't have impulsion, like behavior. You can't have impulsions, so you have to plan ahead. And I didn't go, so because it's I don't know if you've ever been to Angoulême, but it's a huge comics market, and you have 1,000,000 books and authors and people talking about comics. It's really great. It makes you feel like you have the most important job in the world, except when you don't have anything to show, and then you really feel like a total loser. And I didn't have anything to show. I've been working on a comic for years now, and so I was like, these are a lot of good reasons to stay home and wait for the people to come back and tell me the stories.
So if we are talking about the projects, ongoing projects, going for years or shorter or longer period, I have to ask what are the projects? I mean, basically Rebecca brought some silk screen prints and some I saw a short collection, like there is also a publication. So tell us more. What did you bring with you, and what are you working on currently?
Sure. I brought the English edition of the book that's shown here in the exhibition, and then I brought a bunch of productions from our screen printing studio, where we invite artists to do a residency, and we produce a small book or book object with them that is sometimes narrative, sometimes not. And in addition to that, I'm working on a longer graphic novel that will take me the rest of my life, it seems.
Let's hope not. Well, I mean, you know, the whole point of inviting the artists from the other countries is to introduce them to the market. So I'm hoping someone would be interested to publish your stuff soon enough in Poland. But yeah, first you have to finish them. And you, Mathilde, how long is it going on already?
It all started in April 2019, and so basically I come from the indie intuitive comic drawing. I studied illustration, ended up doing zines because I always felt more comfortable with narration in comics, and then I published some indie works with bigger publishers, but they were still very small. And then somehow I ended up agreeing on a trilogy for the youth, so like 12 to 14 years old. And it's a completely different market. It's a completely different way to handle deadlines and paychecks, etc. It goes way faster. So it's been since April 2019 that my full-time job is actually comics. And I'm consumed by the joy of it, and I'm also consumed by it. But it's it's going to be published. It starts being published in September, and then it's all ongoing for 3 gorgeous books.
So you're basically on the last straight, you know, way to really finish and publish the thing.
Yeah.
Right. So I see Rebecca brought a few things here that you can check out later. But maybe we can show the book to the public. I mean, yeah, that's maybe not a bad idea to just give it to them
Also
to. You have one too.
Yeah, I brought the Funky Town.
That's great. So I will provide you with the 2 books. You can take a look while listening to us. And then you can meet Rebecca and Mathilde at the signing point tomorrow. And yeah, expect the drawing. Oh, Funky Town by Mathilde van Gheluve. and The Phlegm by Rebecca Rosen. So one goes to the one side and the other one goes to the other side, and then you're gonna exchange. Yeah, that's very, very good that we can. You will see more things after the meeting here. And so going back to your work, I mean, you both said that you are because you said you're working for a like a younger audience now, 12 to
Yes.
14. Yeah, that's if I'm correct. And that it is a different experience that you had before. And how is it about you, Rebecca? I mean, do you work with for adults for adult
I think I'm
readers?
working for an older audience now. My main character is 50, so I'm aiming for the very profitable women over 50 market.
Sounds like a wealthy segment of the.
Maybe.
So tell me more about the character and the story.
So the main character is based on a woman who, an artist from the 15th century, who was crucial in the Bruegel painter family dynasty, but who's been forgotten by history. We don't know her work, and we only know of her through their biographies.
Is that the woman that was painting miniatures?
Yes.
He was a grandmother of the Peter Bruegel the Younger.
That's
And she
right.
actually taught him how to draw because his father was dead already when he was a grown up.
That's right. That's exactly it. Yeah.
Sounds like a story for us. Well, yeah. And how is it going?
Slow.
Well, it waited for you since the 15th century.
There
so
you go.
it
Exactly. What's another
wait a
few
little
years?
bit longer.
Yeah, yeah. I'm also a relatively new mother, so that does put a break on things. But
That adds up. But is it like how long should it be? I mean, you said like is it a series graphic novel, 100+ pages or
yeah, I'm aiming for 200 pages. Yeah.
200 even full color?
Yeah.
All right. How do you work? Is it like analog or the digital or combined?
In Phlegm, I worked in analog and digital for the colors, and I've been working only in analog on this book. So it takes longer, but I hope it'll pay off.
And also, additionally, you can sell the artwork later, which is like a big part of the profit for the comic artist currently, at least at the Franco-Belgian market. I mean, here is it also growing. I mean, currently in Poland, we have more and more artists who really decide to do this like step or half of a step back to have a little artifact of their work, like at least something, even the pencil sketch that they can sell later. I mean, do you also think about it, or?
I think as a printmaker, I know I only think about reproduction. I don't think about the original at all. It's not about, is that part of your calculation? Do you sell originals?
Yeah, I do. I do take great care of my originals, and I always pay attention to have them very clean and easy to be shown to the public. But it's also because it honestly it came from my lack of competence with computers, and so I had the struggle of not being able to treat them properly on a computer after scanning. So I was like, to facilitate my my problem with computers, I will just have the most perfect originals ever, and then it will really shorten the finalization I have to do in front of a screen. And then it turned out into a habit, because it made everything easier, exposing your work in a gallery, selling it to people, etc. And I also took the habit of not writing my text in the bubble, the speech bubbles, because I always thought then I would have that clean originals for translation. So
Yeah, that's smart.
I have I am full of OCDs towards my originals.
Very traditional conservative approach, but it makes me joy because what I do run is a comic museum. So we do acquire this kind of artwork, and we store it, and then we reproduce it in on the both in books and exhibitions. So,
but actually, that's what changed my also my Funky Town exists because I did a residency in Angoulême, and my first
yes.
move was to go and visit the archives of the museum. And we had this great tour guide that told us how it was important to protect your art and your originals and how to take care of them, etc. And she listed all the stuff you shouldn't do, and I was doing all of them, and I was like, this needs to change. And
What were those things?
for example, don't use Tipex, which is this
Whiteout.
like
Yeah.
blank whiteout, blanco, etc. Don't use glue. Always use like the paper tape that ages very properly. Don't use cheap pens. Don't use this acidic papers. Like basically use the good ink and the good paper. She would use good material, and
You
it
don't
will
find it
last.
stressful to use good materials? Sometimes I find the more money I spend on materials, the more I'm paralyzed when it comes to using like really expensive paper is
But
it's
I think it-
paralyzing.
Yeah, a little
I
bit.
think for me it grew because, for example, the originals of Funky Town, they're made on like 3 different colors of whites. There's like this 3 different papers, and their thickness is not the same, the grain is not the same, and you can kind of see it on the pages. And so slowly I grew up to, okay, this is my job. I need to take it seriously. Originals are also part of the market, and I started make grown-up choices about it. But it's true, like my zines, I drew them on like machine, like Xerox paper that you use on a printer, and then afterwards they were all like wobbly, and my art teacher's like, what are you doing? So yeah, I learned.
Yeah, by the way, greetings from from Pili, the director of the Angoulême
Yeah.
Residence Center. We've met a week ago, and your name came up.
Oh, great.
They do remember you very well. So,
yeah.
and I will tell them that you
Yes,
took the lesson deeply to your heart.
I still love them.
For you, I will just say that we also have a I'm looking for the word. We do cooperate with the Angoulême Residence Center, and last year we had a resident. It was Tomasz Spell, who was doing his Zasada Trójek, the new album that you can buy at the book fair, at the comic fair in Muzeum Komiksu. And this year we are about to send a new resident very, very soon. We're going to announce it at the beginning of April. So we have this cooperation with this residence center. Is a great place, and I hope many, many Polish artists will go there and complete their works, and they will be published both here and in France. So definitely we recommend. We do, yes.
Yeah, I really, how to explain, like, my 2 first books only existed because I went on residencies, because, and I think you can back me up on that, it's actually, it's like almost a monkish life. You have to make space, not only in your mind, but also around you, like physical and mental space to start up a project, because it's very confrontational to have this great idea and then be like, okay, now put it on paper, and you're scared of not being able to tell this brilliant story you have in your mind perfectly. And I feel that for me, residencies provided me the chance to actually have that time and space. Because I found it very difficult to, not apologize for myself and finding time after your day job that helps you pay the bills, etc. For comics. It takes a lot of energy, and I feel like residencies really provide that for you.
Exactly. That's why we do send artists there.
Yeah.
The residency at Angoulême seems to also provide the chance to meet artists from well outside your circle and find inspiration from people creating from all over the world. I was really impressed at the show that there were artists from all over the world.
Yeah, exactly. There's like
really cool.
50 different residents per year, and it's about 25 of them at the same time, because that's the capacity of the building and the workshops that are being used there. And the residents are living in the city in the rent apartments, but they work together in this residence center. It's we do recommend a lot. But let's get back to your work.
Yeah.
I mean, your current work.
Go to Angoulême.
Go to Angoulême, yeah, definitely. But getting back to Brussels, because it's like the theme, the topic of the meeting. By the way, there's an exhibition of the Brussels artists on the other side of the street. I was saying that before, but be sure to go and check it out, especially the panels of Rebecca and Mathilde. So what are you showing on the panels? Or actually the books that we have in the room, but not only, I guess. I mean, I don't remember exactly, but I think there was like an older and newer things there.
Yeah, I think so Matthias Rose is the person that designed the exhibition and also actually had the impulsion of put together all those artists. And I think what he tried to show is the name of the exhibition is what is going on right now in Brussels. Because also the thing we were talking about it before is that with Franco-Belgian culture, especially in Belgium, you have the weight of the past. And sometimes you're like, people focus so much on what happened before and what they know, which is Spirou, Tintin, and all that type of stuff. That Smurfs. Smurfs.
Let's not forget about them.
Let's not forget about the Smurfs. Difficult too. But so that they actually miss what is going on. And I feel like there's also something in the Belgian culture which is to be quite discreet about yourself. So Matthias just gathered all these people and was like, just give me your work, I will make a great show. And you're all like, oh yeah, sure, no problem. And then now it's going all over the place and it's actually having quite an impact. So, which is great.
Great.
I think the show is currently in Guangzhou, Brazil, and Rwanda.
And Krakow. Sounds
Krakow.
good. So it's like 4 different places on the globe. But what we wanted to focus mainly was the female comic from Brussels, and we actually wanted to invite more female artists, but we just managed to have you. But we also asked Aurélie Villemette, which you probably know, and some other female artists who are included to the exhibition, because we wanted to underline the female comic. So how many of you are there? I mean, I refer to female artists because you do know each other as far as I know.
We are legion.
You are a legion. Yeah, that's what I expected, really.
Yeah, I think so I recently started trying to organize a monthly meetup for women who work in comics and illustration in Brussels. And I started off with a list of 30 names, and it
30.
Yeah, 30.
All
and
right.
It grew super quickly. There are a lot of us, and we're working in all different sectors, all different domains, and with different materials. There's like a huge diversity. Yeah, there's a lot of people.
Well, I'm asking about it because recently in Poland we also have a number of projects that are all female projects. Like I'm talking about anthologies, exhibitions, zines, different things that unite women, especially in the last years were quite tough, and there was a lot of women movements and women rights fighting, also backed by men, of course, but basically the women were heard on the streets and in the public space, and it somehow continues in the illustration and comic movement. So I was interested in if that works similarly in Brussels currently, or you're on a different moment, let's say, momentum.
I mean, I think there's that slogan from the feminist movement of the personal is political, and I think the professional is also political, and it's all indissociable.
Yeah, to me, there's something about the fact that it's less problematic to gather as a woman collective. This is how I started. We were just a bunch of girls, and we made zines, etc. And we were often like, people ask us like, "But are you feminist because you're a woman?" And we're like, "Yes, but it's not because we're women. It's because it's important, And I feel like in Belgium, there is now more and more, it's more and more usual to hear about the stories of women, because also like there's I don't know if it's a reflex, but there's a state of being from women artists that are like, yeah, that's just what I do. Like for Funky Tan, for example, it's a discussion between 3 women that are at different stages of their life. There's a kid, some, like, I would say, young adult type of like poetic, like you know how you picture yourself when you're a teenager. And there's a mom, and the first question people asked me was like, but was it intentional to make these three women talk together? And I was like, no, but it's just my experience of life. Like I don't know how to be as a man, so I'm not gonna pretend I want to act that up. So yeah, I feel this is kind of like the atmosphere in Brussels is, yeah, we're doing it. Get on board.
All right. I mean, it's relatively fresh here in Poland. I mean, we just to sketch this the timeline. I mean, we didn't have much female artists during the communism. There was just one really famous female comic artist, and then after the communism broke,
So who is that?
she was Charlotta Paweł. She's recently died, and she was doing a very famous series for children called Jonka, Jonek and Kleks, which is probably known to many of you, and you never heard of it, obviously. But at the museum we have some original panels of this artist, so I can show it to you. Anyway, she was like, I was when I was young, I was reading that among male artists, there were more of them, but this one was really important. She was always part of this big four names, biggest four names in the Polish comic industry of that time. And then after 1989, there was like a downfall. Basically, the print runs went down, and there was not much comics. And that was when the zine scene started to grow up. But there was no girls there. It was all man hobby, really. And if I remind myself, the festivals from 20 years ago, it was all male. But it started to, the percentage of women started to rise. And currently we have even more female artists than the male artists, I would presume. And they're very active and always publishing something. And even now there's like an anthology of the stories about the abortion. It's called In Your Own Voice, Her Stories of Abortion. So it's like her story is also a very important movement lately. So there's like a huge group of girls, I think 20 something, that are telling stories of other girls who actually got aborted. And that's interesting, and even the cover is done by the female artist, and there's a whole thing behind it. So it's relatively important now here in Poland.
I feel like, and correct me at any moment in time, but I feel like because you have Belgian, French, and Swiss comics, and everybody speaks French, but actually you have like French-speaking comics, and everything kind of gathers around the Festival of Angoulême and the selection they have there. And actually what happens is, I think back in 2016, they noticed that the 50 plus books that were selected as contestant for prizes in Angoulême were all male authors. And all of a sudden the female authors woke up like, what? What the hell is going on? And when the director of the festival was questioned, he was like, well, he answered that very basic question, which is not my fault. There are not enough female artists. And you're like, well, and then from there was created the collective that is only female authors. And that actually started questioning the presence of female authors. And that's my interpretation on it, is that we didn't question it before this happened so much because we thought that everything was fine. Like we our rights to abortions were not questioned, and everything felt kind of fine. And what happened with this, and then you had movements like Me Too, actually, that echoed to Belgium as well. Where female authors question more and more their space in the industry, which is true, was little hands of colorists, printers, etc. And also like they were very pushed aside to what they call, and it's horrible, they call it girly comics, which is basically autobiographical comics about your boyfriends and cats. and because that was also like in
That was harsh, but
no, but
I get the message.
where it comes from is that in parallel with the 50 books that were selected, there was an exhibition that was organized actually in Brussels that was called Girly Comics, and the spark for the collective for female authors were these two things, which is like, but what is the message you say behind girly comics, because you don't use it in a way that is nice, and there is more to women female authors, and we can show you that because we gathered so many different style of drawing, so many different style of stories. The problem is to get into publishing is that you have a certain type of subject it's okay for you to talk about. And this is also when the things started to be questioned for the French female authors. And for example, my first book that was published in 2016, it was with a very small Swiss publishers, and it spoke about a pedophilia case back in the 90s in Belgium, and how it is to grow through that type of stuff when you're a 7-year-old daughter, and how much it influences your connection to violent sexuality. The first notion of sexuality you have is extremely violent, and I really had no hope for this book to be noticed, but because of the year it was, people actually like looked at that book in a way that I hadn't planned, and I really had
as a female voice.
Yeah, they really wondered about what is a female experience, because I think also the male authors thought everything was okay, and they discovered it wasn't, and everybody was quite shocked. So yeah, I think this is also the timeline for Franco-Belgian comics. This 2016 was a year of massive shame for everybody.
But after this, wave of interest in the female comic, isn't it like a little bit back to normal now? I mean, back to business. When I was in Angoulême this year, I mean, of course there was Grand Prix for Julie Doucet, but then if you go to the award ceremony by the end of the festival, and there's a certain moment by the end of the ceremony when all the awarded people go together to the stage, and you can see the majority of them is men. I mean, still, there will be probably, I don't know, 100+ people on the stage, and most of them were men. So
that's an interesting difference to make, is that the Grand Prix, so this year, for the people that didn't follow, you have one massive award you get for the career of someone. And this year it was a Canadian woman that hadn't published anything in 15+ years, and that got known for publishing very hardcore punk zines about her sexuality and hard life.
Yeah. Hardcore punk. I mean,
sorry.
I think they're
French
pretty
people.
nuanced. Yeah.
But in general, I mean, I never heard about her before, and this is
really?
like I'm trying to be up to things, but I was pretty surprised. I mean, no offense, but I looked at
Yeah.
the stage and I saw, who is this woman who Chris Ware is giving the award to? I mean, in the contrary, and he also said like he said something like, I really admire her work and I was formed by it.
Yeah.
And that was really something, because Chris Ware is pretty well known, and she wasn't, at least in Poland. I mean, in France probably. So when I was, even writing a note on the Facebook page, people were asking like, who? Julie who? Because it was like really.
I think she, you know how you can have like a filmmaker's filmmaker? I think she's a comics artist. I think I would say all comics artists, a lot of comics artists know her. Maybe especially people who are interested in exploring darker, more complex subject matter that is drawn from real life. Yeah. I think she had a big influence on alternative and autobiographical comics, and alternative and autobiographical comics had a big influence on the larger market, and maybe the evolution of literary comics and graphic novels, and that sort of the graphic novel form as a recognized literary genre.
I mean, this is a general rule that I'm familiar with, but the specific name was really
Yeah.
unknown to me, and
I ran
it is
into an
kind of.
acquaintance at Angoulême.
Sorry?
I ran into an acquaintance at Angoulême, an American I hadn't seen in like a decade and a half, and he reminded me of this big blockbuster museum show in New York 15 years ago that was called Masters of American Comics, and it was 20 men from the history of American comics. We were just talking about how that wouldn't happen today because times have changed and there is a recognition that maybe women artists who weren't recognized 15 years ago or 20 years ago or 40 years ago or when they were creating need to be recognized today.
But is she is Julie Doucet someone like, I don't know, Charles Burns, or a founding person who really
She's of that generation, yeah.
she's of that generation. That's what I understood from this brief presentation of her, and
And she's a
it's-
hometown girl, so for me she was hugely influential. But I don't know outside of
To me as well, I actually heard about her through being a comic artist, and it was more something that you would tell your friends, like this very cool, precise indie band when you're a teenager, and you're like, this one is special, and I will only give it to you. I feel like Julie Doucet was known amongst comic artists like that, like, okay, seems like you're cool, I can tell you about Julie Doucet. And also, that's what I wanted to say. The difference between the awards and the Great Prize in Angoulême is that the Great Prize, it's voted by authors. And I think it's been 10 years I'm nominating Julie Doucet. So I'm actually very happy she won. Every year I'm like, Julie Doucet. But so that's the difference, is that the comic artists elect their peers for the Grand Prix. And it's a recognition from comic artists for Julie Doucet, which I think shows a lot about how she's known.
how she was influential to other people. All right then. So, but do you like do you see your position at the market? I mean, you have two books currently, Rebecca, one. So you're still
And many, many, many prints.
Right, yeah.
basically still at the beginning of your career. So where do you see yourself in, I don't know, 5 years? I mean, as if you started to do more commercial things. I mean, when you say about young adults like 12 to 14, I picture I do write scripts for comics like that, the same group of age. So I can relate. I mean, this is a more mainstream commercial job. So is it something you would like to, proceed with, or it's just a temporary, purely, business motivated thing, or?
Well, actually, I was just really surprised that my work could fit there, and I was like, oh, I am also able to do that, and it actually looks okay, and everybody seems happy about it. So, all right, let's go forward. But I must say, I entered. It's sci-fi-ish, intergalactical story about a 12-year-old that cooks in an environment where you have gigantic insects. So basically, this is my comfort zone. It was way, 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 way out there. And I was just very happy to feel happy drawing this, and to feel like I could explore another part of what the comic world is. And I must say, like, it did open a door where I was like, oh, I haven't met the audience yet because there's no book out, but I must say, like, all the people that I could meet that also work in the youth comics business, they said the same thing, which is it is so incredible to write stories for kids because they react so strongly. They really have a strong reaction to it, and when you can grasp some of their attention, you really are way like.
It is rewarding. Yeah? But is that aimed to be a series, or?
Yeah, it's a trilogy, but I think that for me, 3 books on one subject is it. I've never done this, and to me it felt like the subject has been talked about. And actually, Funky Town is also the first of a trilogy, And after doing my first steps in the youth
In the
comic world,
intergalactic stories.
yeah, intergalactic stories, I think I will go back to Funky Town and finish to explore that part, and then we will see. We will see. I must say, like, it's the beginning of a career, but I have been fairly lucky. For my first book, it was a classmate that brought me, like, that said, if you can't do it by yourself because it's an intense subject, pedophilia, I will do it with you. And this is how we started communicating in this book. It's small stories that answer each other's experience of the whole thing. And then Funky Town was a short story, and through comic festivals I met the publishers. They were like, but what is going on? What is this? Make it a long story. And I was like, okay. And then as I was making it, I was like, it's a trilogy. And they went along with it. So
Things escalated quite quickly. Yeah? Rebecca, 5 years from now.
I mean, I began my career in comics working as a designer for a publisher, and I continue to do that for publishers. And parallel to that, we have this very small press, and we collaborate with artists on artist books. And so I feel like my career is like comics are part of my career, but that doesn't necessarily define my career. And I also feel quite comfortable in the margins. And so I look forward to putting out the book that I'm working on. But I think I'll continue to do what I'm doing.
But in the main book you told me about, asked about,
Yeah.
it's also quite mainstream, I would say. I mean, there's historical motifs and 200 pages in color. That
But I'm
sounds
gonna
to me
make
like
it weird. It's gonna end up being weird.
all right.
Even if I don't mean it to be, it'll be weird. I can't help it.
But it's also something that I can picture on the bookshelf in Angoulême, in the big tent. Maybe not the
Yeah.
bulls, but you know, the
Yeah.
fairly big publishing house. So is that something you aim? You said margins, of course, and
Yeah.
this is a comfort zone of this print screens you have there. But the
Yeah. I don't have a publisher for that project yet.
big one, you mean?
Yeah, that's it. I don't have a publisher for that yet. I think, I don't know, working in publishing, I kind of see how the sausage is made, and I don't know that I want to be the sausage.
Fair point. Good. We have another 5 minutes, so that's probably a good moment for you, for our audience to be part of it. So if any one of you, because I see you making notes, so if any of you have any questions, that will be probably the good moment to ask them. Do you? Maybe in Polish, I can translate it, if necessarily. Yeah, and then take your time and think about it. And
actually, I have a question for you, if you don't mind.
cool. I mean, I'm excluded probably, but
You can just raise your hands, but are any of you drawing comics currently? Or okay.
not in the exact moment. But
Raise your hand.
who's drawing
Alright.
them? Well, there's a one person.
All right. And are you guys all reading comics frequently?
Hands
Yeah.
up. Yep. Frequently means once a
Nice.
week. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even have that time.
Yeah. Me too. Me neither. Just read them before the festival because I have to, know what I'm talking about with the guests. But then, well, I'm guessing you are just basically interested in all of the subjects. I mean, women's studies, comics, Brussels, and so on and so on. So, good. Okay, then. So let's have a small moment. I mean, I'm not sure what's in the program next, but we have 5 minutes. So if you want to come and see the publications, or you want a signature or a small drawing, it's probably the good moment to do that before I will just take my guests to the Museum of Comic, where we are having the grand finale of the first day. So thank you a lot about your for your stories and for your presence here, because I know this is also something we have to underline before we finish. I know that you hesitated a bit because of the current political situation, and you, from the Belgian perspective, it seems like we are very close to the conflict here in Poland. So
It was more about for me, I don't want to speak for you, but for me, it really is something that comes back a lot while drawing comics, is like, what is my purpose? Like, how am I useful to this crazy situation? And I do feel like the answer that comes often for people that organize that type of event is like, people need to change their mind. They need to
Exactly.
think about another world sometimes.
exactly the same I've heard from Rebecca when we talked in Angoulême. So you shared the same vision about the actual situation here in the Middle Europe, and that's also my thoughts, that we don't we can't forget about what is happening in Ukraine currently, and we do not. And if you go to the comic fair, you will see there's plenty of graphics and publications about Ukraine or from Ukrainian artists, and the all income that we get from selling them goes to Ukraine. So we do support, and we try to demonstrate it. And there's a fair number of people from Ukraine who came to cosplay with us, and these are refugees from all over the Ukraine, and they find their small piece of normality at our festival. So I'm really proud of it, and I'm really happy that you answered and you came, and I'm hoping that we are in a way trying a little bit, helping to feel people normal. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, actually.
Thank you too, and see you soon again.